There are many mysteries over our 16-year Call of Duty zombie history, but none of them more perplexing, is that a word, than the Ascension poster. Meant to market this map, which was the first DLC map for Black Ops 1, we saw on it in the front of 4 main characters: Tank Dempsey, Takeo, Nikolai, and Richtofen? No, it's a... Why is he bald? Why is he wearing a different costume than what he usually would, but this is what he's wearing in the map itself? Why does he also have pretty similar scars on his face to what Richtofen has, but why is he bald? Who is this? And that was the question that was asked immediately when we saw this. Who was the bald man on the Ascension poster? Was it Richtofen? And if it wasn't him, then where was Richtofen? Why wasn't he on the poster? Why was he replaced with this bald character? And so there was 2 assumptions as to what happened here. Either this was supposed to be Richtofen and for whatever reason, just on this poster he looked bald, because if you compare this bald person to how Richtofen looks in Ascension, he is wearing the exact same outfit, not his usual German attire, but a spacesuit. A lot of the bloodstains that we see on him, on his clothing and on his face, again match pretty closely to this bald person's on the poster. The splatters of blood or scarring on his face is pretty close as well, the lines on his cheeks and under his eye. The only weird difference between this person on the poster and how Richtofen looks in Ascension is he is bald, which leaves only 2 conclusions. Either Troyokov made a mistake here, and this bald man is Richtofen, but for whatever reason they've, I don't know, not drawn hair on him, or something, but this is Richtofen. Or the other answer is, this wasn't Richtofen. And as we found out from an interview between Jason Blundell and Mr. Waffles, the latter was the case.
Is Richtofen the bald man in the First Strike poster?
No.
What? What? Are you... Is that a joke? It's a joke.
No, pass.
What?
So Jason Blundell, who was the director of Zombies at the time, was asked if the bald man on the Ascension poster was Richtofen, and he said no. You could then see he changed his answer slightly, where he said, actually, pass. I'm thinking because this was something he wasn't supposed to say or reveal, but he did. The bald person on the Ascension poster isn't Richtofen. And not long after that, when the Zombies Chronicles version of Ascension released, that was once again confirmed to us by Dr. Monty.
Do you remember Gersh? Bald guy who fought alongside you for a while? I think Richtofen was off somewhere at the time.
So as you just heard, as Monty is speaking to the Ultimus characters, he says to them, do you remember Gersh? Bald guy? He fought alongside you for a while. I think Richtofen was off somewhere at the time. So we finally had confirmation that the bald person on the Ascension poster was Gersh, and the reason why Richtofen replaced him on the poster is because Richtofen was off somewhere else doing whatever, and Gersh replaced him for a short amount of time to fight alongside Dempsey, Takeo and Nikolai. However, this just brings up so many more questions because it doesn't add up, and let me show you why. So the first one being, okay, so we know this bald person is Dr. Gersh, but if we are being told he fought alongside Dempsey, Takeo and Nikolai, at what point in the timeline did that happen? Because there is no, I guess, gap in the zombie story where something like this could have taken place. It would have had to have been before the events in Ascension where Gersh got himself trapped inside of the Casimir mechanism. However, when we travel to Ascension as Ultimus, as Richtofen, Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey, and we find Gersh trapped here in this device in the Casimir mechanism, asking for us to free him, at no point during the Ascension Easter egg, when the characters are conversating between one another, do they make it clear that they know each other, that they've met before or fought together. Surely if Gersh had fought alongside Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey, they would have at least acknowledged during the Ascension Easter egg when they were talking to one another, we fought alongside each other before. Gersh would have said to them, I've helped you out in the past, or Dempsey would have said, haven't we met? Something like that, you know, to at least acknowledge that Gersh had fought alongside Dempsey, Takeo and Nikolai before the events of Ascension. But nothing of the sorts is ever brought up. In fact, from what Ultimus do say to Gersh and vice versa, it sounds like they've never met before. They have no idea who this Gersh person is, which to me is weird. If they had fought alongside each other before, then surely they would have known who this Gersh character was. I will say perhaps they just never learned his name, and because he's trapped inside of the Casimir mechanism, they don't see him, but surely they would have recognised his voice, or Gersh would have recognised theirs. It's just a little bit suspicious how, during the Ascension Easter egg, it's very clear they don't know each other, yet we're being told by Dr. Monty that they fought alongside each other before this, and that was why we saw them together in the Ascension poster. So that's the first thing that just doesn't make sense. But also, as I was saying earlier, there is no gap in the timeline, no room from the dates that we know where these characters could have possibly fought alongside one another, because this would have had to have happened after the events of Kino der Toten, but before the events of Ascension. And we know that because, well, in Ascension, in the original version, not the Zombies Chronicles version, we'll get to that, Richthofen is wearing this spacesuit, whereas the other characters, Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey, are wearing their normal attire. We know this spacesuit that Richthofen's wearing in Ascension is from the Russians, due to a document that we find in Classified from the year 1957. It says, Memorandum for Colonel Sawyer, subject report from Chief Operative, Operation Dissension. New drop from the operative inside the Ascension Group confirms DoD and CIA suspicions. The Ascension Group has successfully completed work on a functional matter transference device. Operative confirms Dr. Gersh oversaw the project. As of now, their teleportation tests have been limited in scope. No human testing currently. Furthest they've gone thus far is trials involving monkeys, which were successful. In addition, Operative confirms other suspicion. Recovered documents prove that Dr. Richthofen did in fact make a deal with the Soviets in 1945. We have not nailed the exact date, but we can confirm it to be around the time that the deal was made for Operation Stapler. Looks like you were right. Richthofen played both of us. One of the documents seized detailed Richthofen's provisions, a list of materials he desired, expressly stipulated in his agreement with the Soviets. A few on the list matched the ones he delivered to us, however, there were a few unique standouts of interest. One pet monkey, one recording of Igor Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, one cosmonaut spacesuit, and one lunar lander, coordinates to be specified. So as you can see, Richthofen requested from the Soviets a cosmonaut spacesuit, and the date this happens, we are told, was during the time he made the deal with the Americans for Operation Stapler, and we know that deal happened on the 23rd of March 1946. But we can shorten the time gap down even further, because in Kino der Toten, the map before Ascension, Richthofen wasn't wearing this spacesuit, yet in Ascension he is, which means Richthofen went missing. He went off doing whatever he was doing on his own before Ascension, but after Kino der Toten, because he's still wearing his spacesuit in Ascension but not in Kino. So that event of him leaving and Gersh replacing him to fight alongside the crew for a little bit had to have happened between these two maps. But if you look at the timeline and what events we know took place between the two maps, there is no room for something like this to take place. In that time frame, as far as Gersh goes, he was working on Project Mercury, he was also working on the Gersh device. Basically, during that whole time he was working at Ascension, and as for the Ultimus characters, Richthofen, Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey, they used a lunar lander to fly from Kino to Ascension, and it took them about a week. They left Kino on October the 28th and arrived in Ascension on November the 6th. That does leave a week's gap for them to, I don't know, stop off and something else to happen, but we're never told that. The Canorium doesn't mention it. Nothing of the sorts is mentioned anywhere in the zombie storyline through radios or documents. We assume they just flew straight from Kino der Toten in Berlin to the Ascension base in the Soviet Cosmodrome, and it took them a week to fly there. They flew straight from Kino to Ascension. And like I said, Gersh was working at Ascension the whole time. Nothing that we know of happens in that week. But if we are being told by Dr. Monty that actually Richthofen went missing, he went off on his own mission, and Gersh replaced him to fight alongside us, how is that even possible? Also the fact that, okay, let's just say within that week, Richthofen did leave Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey, and Gersh managed to fill in for him. Well, where did he go, and what did he do that meant he required this Soviet spacesuit? The only answer is he went to space, but for what reason? Everything he needed as a part of his grand scheme to switch positions with Samantha and control the zombies for himself in the MPD on Moon, we saw him collect throughout all of the maps. It just doesn't really add up. And then to make it even more confusing, when we got the Zombies Chronicles version of Ascension, Richthofen was wearing his usual German attire. He wasn't wearing this spacesuit anymore. Now, we do know, as I've said before, these Zombies Chronicles maps do take place in alternate dimensions to the original timeline. We know that because some things are slightly different. For example, in this version of Ascension, we see the Shadow Man lurking in one of the windows. He wasn't there in the original map. So we know the Zombie Chronicles remakes of these maps are shifted from the original timeline. So there's an excuse as to why Richthofen isn't wearing his spacesuit in this map. You could say, well, whatever he did in the original timeline that required him to leave the group and Gersh to fill in wasn't required in this timeline, which would then tell me that whatever he did was minuscule and not really of importance. But this also has me convinced that all of this was just made up on the spot by Treyarch. I kind of think the bald person on the Ascension poster was supposed to be Richthofen. He's wearing the exact same outfit. He's got the same bloodstains on his clothing and his face. The only difference is he looks bald for whatever reason, and then because of that and all of the speculation that surrounded it, Treyarch went along with it. Jason Blundell accidentally said the bald person isn't Richtofen. Treyarch then had to confirm that in the Ascension radio and say, yep, that's actually Gersh, and at the time Richtofen went off doing something on his own, but they didn't go as far as to think, well actually, there is nothing that really makes sense that would corroborate that. So I think perhaps the fact that the bald person is Gersh was added later on, but Richtofen was wearing his Soviet spacesuit in Ascension, which means he must have done something that we don't know of before this, but what that is a total mystery. It obviously involved him going to space, probably the moon, Griffin Station, but to do what? There is no answer, because he goes there later on to complete his grand scheme. Everything he needed for that, he collected along the way in Call of the Dead and Shangri-La, the Golden Rod and the Focusing Stone. This truly is one of the biggest mysteries in zombies. The bald person on the poster is Gersh, that's confirmed, but we don't know at what point they fought together, and we also don't know what Richtofen was doing when he left the group during that week's trip from Kino to Ascension, and why he couldn't have taken them with him. The Ultimates versions of Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey were suffering from memory loss 115 based delusions. They weren't questioning anything Richtofen was doing, so I can't see any reason why he wouldn't have taken them with him, maybe because he only had one spacesuit, but why he would have then asked Gersh to fill in for him, if he did ask him at all, and then why the Ultimates crew act like they have no idea who Gersh is when they get to Ascension. Yeah, none of it really makes any sense. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.